Okay, the next part we're going to talk about is solving absolute value equations. Now, I'm sure you guys have already heard about absolute value, but let's talk a little bit more about what absolute value is. Absolute value is a number's distance from zero. Now, when you think about distance, distance is always going to be positive. So like if we were going to go from Tracy to LA, it's 300 miles from Tracy to LA. Well, if you went from LA back to Tracy, you wouldn't say we went negative 300 miles. You'd just say I went 300 miles. So when you think about absolute value, okay, your answer is always going to be positive, right? Okay, so what we want to talk about though is we want to talk about what numbers have a distance from zero. So if I had like the absolute value of x is equal to 2, okay, what it's saying is what number's distance from 0 equals 2. And if we drew that on a number line, okay, obviously 0 is right there, so you would go, well, 2 has a distance from 0, that's 2. But you also have to think about, like, look at negative 2 is also a distance from 0 of 2. Okay, so 2 or negative 2 could be that number that they're looking for. So you got to make sure when you're doing problems like this, when you go to find out what that x is, you have to say, look, it could be 2 or x could be negative 2. So it could be either one of those two. So you got to make sure that you include both in those examples. Okay, so we have now, in your example on page 18, okay, they gave us the absolute value of x is equal to 6. So what it's saying is what number's absolute value is equal to 6. Okay, so your answer would be x equals 6 or x is equal to negative 6. So when you're talking about absolute value, you take whatever's inside the absolute value and you set it equal to the positive and the negative version of that number. Okay, so now in the next example they have here, they have the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 12. Okay, so the absolute value of what number plus 2 is going to equal 12. So just like we did when we didn't have an absolute value, what you have to do is you have to get the part inside the absolute value all by itself. So we're solving for the absolute value here. Okay, so how would we get rid of this plus 2? We would subtract 2. Right, subtract 2 from both sides, and you get the absolute value of x is equal to 10. Okay, and then when you're done, you got to put x is equal to 10, or x can be equal to negative 10. It can be either one of those. Okay, so you want to get the absolute value portion by itself first, and then take whatever's inside the absolute value and set it equal to the positive and the negative answer. Okay, so you guys put it both ways. Alright, so now let's take another example on that same page. We're still on page 18, and this time they have 3 times the absolute value of b minus 4 is equal to 2. Okay, and again, we're going to pretend the absolute value is just like having an x in there or just like having a b in there. Okay, and we're going to try to get that absolute value solved all by itself, get it isolated. So the first thing we do, we got to get rid of that minus 4. So we add 4 to both sides, and those go away. So we're left on this side with 3 times the absolute value of b, and then over here we're left with 6. So now we want to get that absolute value of b all by itself, so we got to divide by that 3. And now we have the absolute value of b all by itself, and 6 over 3 is equal to 2. So the absolute value b in this case could be, b could be positive 2 or b could be negative 2, because either one of those two are going to have an absolute value of positive 2. Alright, so those are your examples on page 18, and now it gets into a little bit more of questions. They're really not, they're not anything more difficult. It's just going to add a little bit inside of the absolute value, which is going to make you do a little bit more work at the end. Okay, so where before we had the absolute value of x equals 6, in this case we have the absolute value of x minus 7, okay, is equal to 19. So what they're saying here is what number minus 7, their absolute value is going to equal 19. Okay, so what you're going to do, because we've already isolated the absolute value, you have to take everything inside of it. Okay, so all this stuff in here, and now you're going to take all of that and you're going to set it equal to the positive 19 and negative 19, and then you got to solve it. So we're going to go x minus 7 is equal to positive 19, or x minus 7 can be equal to negative 19. And then you got to solve them both. Now luckily it's pretty simple here, so we add 7 to this side, and you get those cancel out, you get x equals 26. Now on this side, okay, you'd start to think, oh wow, we're going to get the same answer. Well, that's not true at all. Okay, we add 7 to this side, well now we have a negative 19 and a positive 7. So when you have the signs don't match, right, we got to subtract these two numbers. So 19 minus 7 is going to give you 12, and the 19's bigger, so we're going to keep its sign, and then those canceled out, so we're left with x. So our answer is x equals 26, or x equals negative 12. Okay, so it could be either one of those two numbers. Okay, because if you put 26 back in there, what's 26 minus 7 is equal to 19. So that 26 minus 7 is 19. Absolute value of 19 is 19, right? So 19 equals 19. And over here, we have negative 12 minus 7 is equal to 19. And negative 12 minus 7, negative 19. So the absolute value of negative 19 is equal to 19, right? So 19 equals 19. So they both work out. So you got to make sure you're checking your work as you go along. Okay, and now we're just going to go into another example here, and they just kind of tend to get bigger and bigger as you go along. So hopefully you're getting good at this. If not, make sure you pause it and rewind it back and see what I did in the last couple problems to make sure you understand before we move on. Okay, so we have 3 times the absolute value of 2x plus 6 plus 4 is equal to 28. Now, we don't have the absolute value by itself here. Okay, so we got to start out by trying to isolate the absolute value just like you would to a variable. So first thing we do is we undo the addition. So we subtract 4 from both sides. Okay, and we got 3 times the quantity of 2x plus 6, so 3 times the absolute value of 2x plus 6, sorry about that, equals 28 minus 4 is 24. So then we divide by the 3 on both sides, and now over here we're left with the absolute value, 2x plus 6 is equal to 24 divided by 3 is 8. Okay, so now we've got the absolute value by itself. So now we take the inside, 2x plus 6, and we set it equal to positive 8, or 2x plus 6 equals negative 8. And now we got to solve both of these. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. I'm going to do both of them at the same time. So minus 6 over here also, same exact steps. So here we're left with 2x equals 2. And over on the right side, those cancel out. We're left with 2x equals negative 14. Because we got a negative plus a negative, right? A negative and a negative number. So we divide by 2 on both sides, all the way across. We have x equals 1 on this side, and we have x equals negative 7 over there. Okay, so now you have a bunch of try these on there. I want you to go ahead and pause this and give all of them a shot. See how you do on those, and then come back to me and we will do them together. Alright, so the first example you have is the absolute value of y equals 17. So pretty simple. We don't have to do anything except for set them equal to y equals 17 or y can equal negative 17. That's your answer. We're done. Pretty simple. Alright, the next one, we got absolute value of y minus 5 is equal to 1. Now the absolute value is not by itself, so we got to get rid of that minus 5, right? So we do the opposite. We do plus 5 to both sides. And we have the absolute value of y is equal to 6. So y can equal 6 or y can equal negative 6. Okay? Alright, so maybe I'll switch a page. Alright, so the next one. 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 15. So we got to get the absolute value all by itself, right? So we got to subtract 1 on both sides. We got 2 times the absolute value of x, those canceled out, equals 14. We divide by 2 on both sides. We have absolute value of x is equal to 7. So x can be 7 or x can be, bad x there, x can be negative 7. Okay. Alright, so maybe I'll just shrink it down this time. Move that over a little bit. And go back at it. So we got, next one we have absolute value of x over 3 plus 7 is equal to 20. So let's start off by getting rid of that 7. So we have absolute value of x over 3 is equal to 13. And to get rid of that little over 3 part, or divided by 3, we multiply by 3 instead, or by 3 over 1 if you want to do that. But we'll just do by 3 on this side. Those cross cancel. Absolute value of x is equal to 39. And so x is going to be equal to 39, or x equals negative 39. Alright, we are just moving right along. I'm going to flip a page here. Alright, the next one, we have the absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 8. So we don't have to solve for the absolute value, which is good, but we do have a little bit of work inside the absolute value. So x plus 5 is equal to 8, or the absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to negative 8. So we subtract 5, and x is going to equal 3 over here, or on this side, x is going to equal negative 13. Okay? And finally, we have absolute value of x plus 4 over 6 is equal to 4. And so we got to get the absolute value by itself. Multiply by 6 over 1 times 6 on this side. Those cancel. Absolute value of x plus 4 is equal to 24. Let me shrink it down. Just move it up a little further. So we got x plus 4 equals 24, or x plus 4 equals negative 24. So you solve by subtracting 4, x equals 20, or subtract 4, x equals negative 28. Alright, so hopefully that took care of it all. If you don't understand anything, feel free to go back as often as you need, check different problems out, or you can just ask me when you get to class.